All right, man. Our man Matt George is here with us. He learned through social media that last week's show went to hell without him, and he just knew no matter how many hours he's worked over the last few days, he had to be with us. I noticed you're from the home studio today, so that's a good look for you. I got a nice little day off. Man, there's a lot more to talk about. I was excited this morning. I was watching the Locked On Kings podcast talking about Zach LaVine and Alex Caruso. And, well, Alex Caruso's headed to the Oklahoma City Thunder, and all trade ideas regarding the Sacramento Kings, the Chicago Bulls for both of those players are gone for now.
Yeah. I mean, that stings because that's the interest that I had in the Zach LaVine trade to begin with. And look, like Alex Caruso is in many ways exactly what the Sacramento Kings would want, exactly what the Sacramento Kings need more of. And the fact that he was available and it only took Josh Giddey to get him, like it stings even more. Now, I think I said this sarcastically on social media, but I guess turns out, guys, that a Kevin Huerter, Harrison Barnes trade package probably doesn't have as much value around the league, apparently, because if Josh Giddey could get it done, but Harrison Barnes and Kevin Huerter don't, I think it gives you a pretty good idea of why the Sacramento Kings have been shopping the same package since the trade deadline and have had really nothing to show for it ultimately. So
do you think they offered those two guys for Alex Caruso?
I mean, that's what was reported, but or I should say they were brought up in conversations. I don't know if it was both of them and picks for both LaVine and Caruso, or if they offered the pair of them for Caruso or a pick in one of them for Caruso. We don't really know. But either way, like it only took Josh Giddey to get Alex Caruso, which is a phenomenal pickup for the Oklahoma City Thunder. That already scary defense just got a lot scarier and a lot better, in my opinion. So I mean, the OKC Thunder were already for real. Now they're even more for real in my eyes. And then, like, to be honest with you, my interest in taking on the Zach LaVine contract went to OKC with Caruso. Like, I think I would have been okay dealing with the repercussions financially of Sacramento taking LaVine if Caruso was coming to Sacramento with him, give or take what the Kings would have to give up in order to make that trade happen. Now, I'm not fully out on LaVine necessarily, but my willingness to deal with the cap hell that the Kings would put themselves in by taking on Zach LaVine, who would be the number one highest paid player on the Kings, by the way. He'd be making almost $10 million per year more than De'Aaron Fox, and he'd be making more money than the $40 million per year contract that Domantas Sabonis just got. So you're putting yourself in cap hell, bringing on your new highest paid player to be your second or third option, and you didn't get a quality defender, which is what this team needs more of in addition to that. So I'm drifting more towards being out on LaVine at this point.
Here's what I would say about that. And something that I've talked about before, and I don't know, I just don't see it the same way. Like, people are acting like Zach LaVine's on that Mike Trout 13-year contract. Like, doesn't he have like 2 years left on his deal?
He's got 2 years and a third year as a player option, which is like for basically $49 million, which he's not turning down. So it's a 3-year deal. You got 3 years.
Three. That's not a big deal. Like, I think it overlaps maybe 1 year because of that player option with what De'Aaron's new deal would be. And it may overlap.
It overlaps with Keegan's too.
2 years with Keegan. And then if it don't work out, he's gone.
Well, here's the thing. If you bring in LaVine, this is your swing. It's your swing because if you bring in LaVine, you're stuck with him for 3 years. There's very low likelihood that you're getting rid of him at any point as the contract gets worse and worse and worse, or more expensive, should I say, as time goes on. If you trade for Zach LaVine, you are capping yourself out at what you are, and that's it. The only way you're moving off that is if you're moving one of Keegan, Fox, or Sabonis, which maybe they're open to down the road, but this core as we know it, I think, is locked in with LaVine. There's no another move that Monty McNair makes to bolster the core of this team at this point. Plus, in my opinion, you don't make the Zach LaVine move at all unless you know that Malik Monk's gone. If the Kings were to trade for Zach LaVine today, the same way that OKC traded for Caruso, to me that says they're pretty confident that Malik is leaving. If they wait until Malik decides to go, let's say he chooses San Antonio or he chooses Orlando or whoever, then maybe they're a little more willing to make the move because they have to find another go-to scorer to fill the void that Malik leaves behind. So the context there is important too. This is not a trade that I would make on draft night with number 13 because we won't know about Malik's decision by then. This is a trade that I think you make later on in the offseason if you're Sacramento and if you're considering taking LaVine on.
One of the things that was said that is that it would cap out the Kings. Going to do that anyway. Like any move you make is going to do that financially and asset wise.
Kuzma doesn't.
Kuzma doesn't, but
Ingram does.
Ingram does
100%
both.
does.
He caps out money wise and asset wise. Kuzma doesn't. But to your original point, though, it's going to take a very specific team, I think, to take on Harrison Barnes and Kevin Huerter.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, if say you make the Kuzma deal, yeah, you still got another move to make, but I keep using this guy, and he's a fine basketball player, but it'd be for like a Brogdon type. It's not, you're not bringing another heavy hitter in there for just Harrison and Huerter, assuming you traded your 13th pick to Washington in the Kuzma deal.
No, you're correct about that. Like I said, if this is those who have been calling for a swing, this is exactly what this would be. Like if you want the Kings to make a big swing this offseason and go all in, that's what a Zach LaVine trade would be in my mind. Now, that does not mean that when I say you're capped out, that doesn't mean that you can't make other minor moves on the side and things like that and little trades to try and bolster the rest of your roster, which I think they would still have to do in addition to any LaVine deal because this team still needs to get better defensively on the perimeter. Zach LaVine does not address your perimeter defense. He gives you another fantastic scoring option, and when healthy, I think he and De'Aaron Fox would be a phenomenally fun and potentially terrifying backcourt to have to face. Zach LaVine directly addresses one of the needs of this team, period, which is another guy that can just go and get you a bucket. And he does that better than Malik Monk does. The offense on the distributing side is Malik has the advantage in that. Defense is probably a wash or a push between the two. But if you're planning on bringing Malik Monk back, I guess defensively, you're okay with the idea of bringing Zach LaVine in. This team still needs help around the edges. But if the Kings go and get LaVine, like, this core is, I think, locked in. Your Fox, Sabonis, LaVine, Keegan. That is it. You have to win with that group. There is no bigger move on top of that unless somehow you convince a player to come in on a vet minimum deal to join the Sacramento Kings and win a title, which that would be a fantastic way to go. But I don't think the Kings put themselves. Yeah, LeBron. Yeah, I don't think that's going to happen.
Even though Rich Paul said what I've been saying for months, and it's that LeBron James isn't taking a minimum deal to sign with Phoenix or anywhere.
Well, he wasn't presented with the Sacramento scenarios.
Well, that's true. That's hey, when the man makes a point, the man makes a point. I'm curious why, and maybe this is something financial that I'm just not smart enough to put together. Why do you only make the LaVine move if Malik's not here?
Because I'm of the if I don't know if Malik does return and you pay the $17.5 million per year or whatever it is to bring him back, I think you getting a Kyle Kuzma or getting a player at a different position on a better contract is a significantly better route for Sacramento to go than bringing Malik back and then bringing in a starter that is 100% going to be playing in front of Malik. And now you've just committed basically your entire bit of cap space this offseason to two guards who don't play defense, two guards that fit more of the old version of the Sacramento Kings and not the newer version of the Kings that Mike Brown has managed to turn this team into the final third of the season. It's my belief this entire offseason, guys, the goal of this offseason is to get your roster and get your philosophy from your head coach on the same page. Using all of your money and all of your assets essentially this offseason. I know they'd still have some picks to trade and things like that, but basically using the majority of what you have this offseason to go get two players at the same position, two ball dominant offensive guards, does not help Sacramento build in the area that Mike Brown believes they need to build and establish a foundation of defense and then offense on top of that. So that's my hesitancy there. And if I consider taking or going for LaVine after Monk leaves, because I'm of the belief that if Malik Monk leaves, you have a massive void on this roster. There is no rookie in this draft class. I'm tired of reading these mock drafts of the Kings should consider taking this guard because they might lose Malik Monk in free agency. Malik Monk should have nothing to do with the Kings draft decision. Absolutely nothing. Because there's not a rookie in this class that is going to come in and replace what Malik Monk does for the Sacramento Kings next season in the Western Conference. It's not going to happen. So if you lose Malik Monk, you have a massive void that you're trying to fill. Zach LaVine might be the best option that you have to fill that void and still potentially improve. But of course, you have to pay top dollar for it.
Everything Matt said makes perfect sense and is on point. I'll just maybe play devil's advocate, or maybe somebody could educate me a little bit more. If you sign Malik Monk, bring back or trade for Zach LaVine, would you still be able to use the mid-level to go get a player, like go get a random wing player that might be a good defender or something like that?
I believe you could. I'm not a cap expert like James Ham is.
That's about $14 million a year.
Yeah, I assume no.
Yeah,
there's two mid levels, right? There's the what was it, 14 million, and then there's like the 7 million one or 6 million one. I can't imagine they'd have the 14 million after acquiring 120 some odd $million.
Even if they did, are you confident that one player at a mid-level exception addresses the defensive perimeter issues that you have?
Sure,
I'm not.
Absolutely, you can.
Well,
like you're not gonna go get. I'll tell you this: you're not gonna spend $25 million on somebody that's gonna go address that need. It's gonna be a guy that is somebody put him in a. It's gonna at least.
Well, how much did Keon help?
A lot.
Like that's what I mean.
Lot, yeah.
Like that was one player who probably makes $650 an hour.
It's gonna be. It's gonna be a Derrick Jones type guy. Like that's what you're gonna be shopping for, regardless of if you get LaVine or not. Like. You're not going to spend $20 million on a wing defender.
Yeah, because you hate OG Anunoby, apparently.
He wants 30.
Well, now I think you're making that up.
So I think that's where you're going to have to, that's where you're going to have to shop for that type of guy. And see if you can find him. I don't want to say I'm a scrap heap because that's a little higher than a scrap heap, but I don't think you should.
Yeah, this isn't like Phoenix fielding a roster last year. That's not what that is.
Right. So I think that's where it would come from anyway.
Yeah, I just think it's redundant. I think going out and getting both Malik and LaVine and essentially using the majority of your assets this offseason in order to do that still puts you in a very similar position to what you were last year. You still lack depth and size and athleticism on the wing. And you're trying to solve the same problem, except now you're paying even more money for what you have. That being said, a roster of Fox, LaVine, Monk, Keegan, and Domas, I understand how that's appealing to people. I understand how that could be scary and enticing. And I'm not saying I would hate it if that's what the Kings rolled into next season, but I still think what they need to address and what they're trying to address this offseason is not taken care of with that deal. I just don't think it's to me does not synergize with what I believe Mike is looking for and what Mike is preaching.
Real quick, I want to ask both of you guys a question. Doesn't what you're looking for this offseason kind of depend on what you think Keegan Murray is? Because if you think he's a 3, then what are we looking for this super wing defender at that point? You got Keon possibly at the 2. You got Malik, who would be starting if you bring him back. That's what I believe. So you're not going to look for this super wing. You then turn your attention to looking for a power 4, like a stretch 4. I think if you think Keegan is your 3, I think personally I like him better as your stretch 4, and that would lend you to be looking for that player that Matt keeps talking about. But it kind of depend on what you view Keegan as?
Well, regardless if you view Keegan as a 3 or a 4, you need more bodies of his size. Like, I mean, the Kings gave up 40+% from 3-point range last season and were abysmal with their 3-point defense, not because they weren't working and trying on the perimeter. To me, it was because they're undersized. Like if Keon Ellis or Davion Mitchell, 6 foot to 6'2" guys, maybe Keon's 6'3" in shoes. Like if you're trying to close out on a 6'7" dude shooting a mid to open jump shot from the perimeter, he's going to be able to more often than not shoot over the top of you. And at the NBA level, with the skill of shooters at the NBA level, it's just not good enough, right? Like Keegan has to take on a lot of the defensive responsibility himself for the wing. Harrison helps him minimally, if at all, with the wing defense. That is Keegan's responsibility and Keegan's alone. So you need to bring in more guys that can help with that. Now, does Kyle Kuzma do that? Kyle Kuzma is not necessarily known for the defense that he can play, but I think Kyle Kuzma gives you a body of that size who I believe would buy in and could buy into Mike Brown's system, assuming Kyle is okay and open to coming here and playing the role that the Sacramento Kings would need him to play. But I'm of the belief that you just need more bodies. You need more guys of that size, because it's Keegan, it's Harrison, and it's Kessler Edwards. And then, I mean, Trey Lyles is kind of that size, but he's more of a small ball 5 than he is a 4 or a 3. So spending all your money on two guards that are 6'3" to 6'5", I think, what is Malik, 6'2", 6'3" to 6'5", that you're still lacking those bodies. And then maybe, like you said, you use your remaining MLE to $7 million, whatever it is, to try and go get one more body of that size to help. But that's not the all in that I feel very comfortable making when Caruso is not a part of the deal.
You talked to De'Aaron, I think it was yesterday.
Yep.
And I know you guys talked a little bit about defense and the way that the Kings played defense last year and its sustainability. We didn't get a chance to play that clip on the show today, but what did De'Aaron say about the way that they played on the defensive end at the end of last season?
Well, he immediately brought up the officiating, and he said, like, there was a drastic change in the middle/back half of the season where the league just decided to let more physicality go. And I think whether it was Adam Silver stepping in or everybody recognizing, hey, 130 to 140 every night is not very fun or not very good. Let's allow these defenders to actually play physical defense before the start of the playoffs. So De'Aaron acknowledged that and talked about how that allowed for more physicality in the second half. And then I kind of followed up with, like, hey, when they made that change, did you prefer it the way it was to end the season when you were having more defensive success, but the game was more physical? And he said, yeah, I feel like I played better on the offensive end at that time. So it doesn't impact me. I can go get a bucket regardless of the defense is physical or not. So what I took away from that answer was, if the Kings are allowed to play physical, they're going to play physical. They want to play physical. That's what Mike Brown has been preaching, and they clearly seem to enjoy and have success with that at the end of the season. But De'Aaron's saying, just be consistent throughout all 82 games. If we can play physical, let us play physical from day one through the playoffs. If we can't, then keep it the way it is all season long, but just stay consistent. No drastic change in the second or the final third of the season.
Yeah, I mean, I liked when they let them defend a little bit more towards the end of the season. I understand what De'Aaron is saying, though. Like, keep it consistent. Whatever you decide to go with, keep it consistent and something that we can make the adjustments to throughout the year, as opposed to just switching it up out of nowhere. And then we got to make another adjustment.
Right.
Just as we were making the adjustment to them, letting it be free flowing. And as soon as we got comfortable with that, they switched it up again. So I understand that. We talk about the Kings defense. I mean, they were mid-level team defensively, with defensive rating and everything else like that. Do you think that they have the ability, with Sabonis in the lineup, not saying he's the problem or anything, but he's not like the greatest defender, to be better?
Who's going to protect the rim, Kenny?
Well,
you think they can be better?
I mean, it's funny you bring up and you talk about rim protection, D'Lo, because there's different types of rim protection, but Mike Brown hates blocks. Like, he's made it very well known. Like, he thinks the block stat is useless. He doesn't care about a block because a block doesn't guarantee you a secured possession. If you knock the ball out of bounds, sure, you save 2 points, but you give possession back to the other team with maybe a little less in the shot clock. Now, having a shot blocker is probably better than not having any rim protection altogether, but Mike is more interested in, I think, having guys who will play physical defense on all three levels, perimeter, mid-range, and in the paint, guys that will communicate on the defensive end as a team. And then after you get a stop or after they miss a shot, guys that will crash the glass and secure the defensive rebound. I think that's what Mike values more of. So Domas can do that, right? Domas, is he a rim protecting center? No, he's not. Is he someone that is a big physical body that should be able to take up space, change shots, and secure defensive rebounds? We've seen him do it. Like, he can do that. So with the philosophy of Mike Brown, with what the Kings need from their interior defense, I think they're fine. The interior defense was not the problem. Mike pointed this out. It could have been better for sure, but Mike pointed this out last season. If the Kings were average with their perimeter defense, they would have been a top 10 defensive team last year. And he pointed that to us halfway through the season, not during the final third of the year when the Kings really started to ramp it up defensively. So if Sacramento can improve that perimeter defense to where a lot of those open shots come from scrambling and helping and trying to lock down the perimeter when cutters are attacking or the ball handlers trying to get to the rim. So that's part of it. But if you can stay consistent with what you were defensively, physically, without fouling, and find a way to better secure the perimeter and not get torched from three and allow teams that come in as a team shooting 30%, but come into the Golden One Center and shoot 45% for some reason, and it happens way too often. If you can limit that, Sacramento's in a much better position to win games, regardless of how their offense is playing that given night. Then, of course, if the Kings get those offensive nights that we know they're capable of, they're knocking down threes, De'Aaron Fox is going off, even Domas is getting his, Keegan goes for 45 again, then that should be a shoe-in easy win for Sacramento instead of you need that some nights in order to win.
Do you think KC asked this earlier? No LaVine, Malik's back, no Kuzma, just the Kings as we know them. An old number 13.
Run it back, part 2.
Is that a playoff team?
Yes. Yeah, I think so. I mean, it's the same way. I think, Casey, you said this earlier on the show. I think you just said it recently. Why would we be confident that that was it going into this season, and now we're not confident just because they missed the playoffs? They were a 46-win team. They were a 46-win team losing a starter and their sixth man to injury at the end. They were a 46-win team that only a third of their season was playing the defense that they believe they're capable of playing for a full season. They've dealt with injuries, although honestly, like if we look at last season, the grand scheme of things, I know the Monk and Herter injuries at the end of the season stuck. De'Aaron still played over 70 games. Domas played every single night. Harrison played every single night. The Kings were still relatively healthy. So I don't mean to say this in a way that scares you and knock on wood. It could have been a whole hell of a lot worse health-wise for Sacramento last season. So that probably is more discouraging than it is encouraging, but this Kings team was right there. And I believe that if you were just to run this team back and tell me that defensively they could play consistently for all 82 games the way that they played for those final 20 or so, I would say, yes, this Kings team is probably a playoff team. Now, winning a championship, making it out of the first round, probably not. Like, I would say championship, most likely not.
I was going to say, I think it's sweet that you said probably not.
Sweet is probably, yeah. I mean, probably is probably very, very generous. I mean, now we're talking about like De'Aaron has to go MVP supernova. Domantas Sabonis has to decide that he's going to shoot the basketball consistently. And then Keegan has to turn into the offensive weapon that the Kings are hoping that he can turn into. That's what you're leaning on to really, truly make a run. But if you're content on playing it patient again and trying to sneak in again and just make it out of the first round, if that's what you're content with, you better do it this time. Like you have to do it this time. And if you're not in a position where you feel like you can, the trade deadline has to be very active.
Here's my issue, though, with both of you. Is they won 48 games 2 years ago. It was only a difference in 2 games. I got that. 48 games would have missed the playoffs last year.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I thought I pointed out.
But 48, those 48 games were with the offense being the way that it was and the defense being poor. Like maybe I'm leaning in too much and buying into
that's okay. So let me go back to the question I asked you a minute ago and rephrase it. What we saw, and maybe De'Aaron addressed this or not, what we saw at the end of last year, was that the Kings defense or was that a change in officiating?
I mean, I think it was a change in the Kings defense. I mean, I think the officiating definitely played a part in it, like De'Aaron pointed out. But if I take you back to the beginning of the season, the Kings were getting out physicaled consistently. And by the end of the season, they were the ones playing physical, and they were the ones kind of bringing the physicality and engaging in that sense. Plus, I think Mike, it took him most of the season, but I think Mike figured out how to use Keon and Davion effectively and how to more get the guys on the floor consistently that could help on the defensive end while not taking too colossal of a drop off on offense. So I do believe that the Kings, I don't think it's fair to the work that Sacramento put in to just say the officiating is what changed or allowed the Kings to suddenly become good defensively. They had to work, they had to put in the effort, they had to fight and play with the physicality that they were playing. But I think the officiating comes into play with if the Kings want to try and be that again this season, but the officiating reverts to how it was at the start of last season, and they're not able to play that way, then they probably are a little concerned. They probably have an issue because the physicality on the defensive end is what they have to rely on more than the skill, because I don't think this roster is skilled enough defensively yet.
I'm a big believer in this, and I always say it, but I mean, I need more offense. I need to get back to that. The whole thing that a lot of people were talking about the year before is they would say if the Kings take a step back on offense but improve on defense, that'll get them ready for the long haul. And that's exactly what happened last year. They took a step back on offense, they got better on defense, and they were at home. And I think they need more bucket getters. That doesn't mean like just go back to being 29th on defense. I'm not saying that, but they need some bucket getters. Like when Monk and Herter went down, it kind of exposed the fact that offensively they weren't as deep as maybe we thought they were, where they weren't able to handle their two shooting guards going down because there wasn't much else in the way of offense after that. I think they need another one, and I think that should be a huge point of emphasis this offseason is finding another bucket getter. And you can look for defense as well, but I feel like those bucket getters cost more than the defenders. You can find a good defender on the cheap. I don't think you can find a good scorer on the cheap.
Casey, I'm going to kind of put you on the spot here a little bit, and I don't mean this in kind of a aggressive jerk way, but like,
just like he was when I said Tatum should have been MVP. Cursed me out on Twitter. It happened.
Well, I just said wrong because you were wrong. But anyway,
Yeah,
you read between the lines. Sorry, underneath the wrong, there was a lot of expletives. Do you not believe Mike Brown? Because Mike is making it very clear this team to win a championship through his experience in Golden State, San Antonio, Cleveland, whatever. Mm-hmm. In his experience, giving up some of the offense, because the Kings were still a good offensive team. I agree with you completely. They needed another go-to scorer. When they lost Monk, it was all on Fox, and that was tough for them to get through. Look at like the New Orleans Pelicans game, right? It was Fox, kind of Sabonis, and nobody else. So you're 100% right about that. I agree with you there, which is where LaVine could help. But Brown is telling us, as the guy who probably knows more than any of us how to win a championship here in Sacramento, Brown is telling us we need more of these defensive guys to be able to build a foundation of a top 10, top 12 defense and have that carry us through to where offensively we will be able to survive nights where we're not all on. Because I think back to a couple of years ago, right? That Kings team was fun. That Kings team offensively was gifted. They led the league. The rest of the league got better offensively than Sacramento even was that season, while the Kings did take a step back. But the Kings also, one, needed to score like that to win. And two, they caught teams by surprise. Like, teams weren't prepared for that. Now they are. And that also plays into the fact that I think the Kings took a little bit of an offensive step back because defenses knew how to handle them a little bit. Defenses knew how to attack Domantas Sabonis in the DHO game. So if I don't think you have to be like team Mike Brown or team against Mike Brown, but Mike is saying this is what we need.
Well, Casey hates coaches, so that would probably be an easy thing to.
Not true at all.
But you just financially
heard what he said about JJ Redick earlier. Jeez,
what I say about JJ?
Nothing,
I'm the only one that
podding. Come on, man.
I'm the only one to say he might be by Pat Riley.
No, you did not say that at all.
JJ Redick getting the head coach job is a win for podcasters everywhere. I have a chance to be an NBA head coach one day.
You got a chance. By the way, I think old Clipped has jumped the shark.
I didn't watch the last episode.
It was it wasn't bad. It wasn't bad, but it was like a what do you call it? It was like a throwback to kind of like give you a little backstory on V, and then they felt we needed a backstory on Doc. I don't mean
to laugh. Like, what are we doing a backstory episode?
So they tried to tie in the '92 riots and like Doc.
Was Doc playing for the Clippers at that time?
Yeah. And now a bunch of white people were like, "No, you can go ahead of me. It's okay. It's okay." And then and I guess in Clipper world, he walked around in his jacket. He walked around in a Clippers jacket that said Rivers on the back. Like he went to the convenience store with that jacket on. Like,
and that's cap. That would get you nowhere. In
all
LA.
right,
Why
man. Like,
get you laughed at in LA.
So I just remember the episode ended, and I was like, "Oh, thank God, it's not winning time."
Well, we saw it. We saw it coming after the last episode.
Have you watched Clipped?
I haven't yet. I've heard it's good, but I haven't.
Well, that's not the word I would use to describe it. It was certainly humorous
Oh.
to start. Like the first 2 episodes was like, yeah, and then it just got, and then you were reminded, hey, we're talking about racism here, and then it wasn't as fun.
All bad. I had high hopes for Clipped.
Well, go ahead, sir.
To answer Matt's question though, Mike Brown, if we're in a room, I will concede to his knowledge and experience being on championship teams and being in this league. And I'll just say, hey, Matt, I concede to you and what you think is best. But I would tell him I respectfully disagree in this particular situation. I think with this group, I just feel like you got to lead with your offense. You got to lead with your offense with this particular group. And I would say I know what he's saying fundamentally is correct, I believe. Like in how you're trying to build a team, I agree. I just don't think that applies to this team. And I don't know if you're going to get that far with this group if you want them to turn into this defense first team. I think you always got to lead with your offense. And when you're making moves to boost this roster, I think you got to think about your offense first and how it affects that, and then see if you can add defense along the way.
So here's the thing, Casey. I was and in many ways still am completely on board with exactly what you're saying, because I think you and I both were captaining the Kings are sacrificing too much on the offensive end for minimal defensive improvement all season long. To where Mike was even talking to us during press conferences about, like, I understand, like, we're still focusing on the offense, but this is what we're trying to do defensively. So Mike was aware of it. We were asking him about it. That was a talking point all season long to the point that people were responding to my podcast going, why are we still talking about this, Matt? It is what it is. This is the direction that they're going in. My thing is, one, you just financially committed to Mike. And Mike kind of, when he came in, he played and installed a system that emphasized the strengths of that roster. Then the exact thing that he said would happen happened. They got bounced in the first round. And he's been very consistent with, I have no interest in being an offensive first firepower team that gets rinsed in the playoffs and doesn't make it past the first or second round every year. I don't have interest in that. And he's experienced that before. He's been on both sides of that before. So he knows what it takes. One thing you said, Casey, that I think is absolutely correct is, with this roster, the way it is, I think you do have to emphasize offense more than Mike did last season. But I think that's the whole point of what I'm talking about this offseason. You need to change that. You need to change the roster to fit the way your head coach believes you should play, and to fit the way that some of your roster has bought into playing. De'Aaron has bought into playing defense at that level. Keon has. Malik has, Keegan has, even Domas to some extent. They have bought into playing the defense that Mike Brown wants to play. You need to go out, and it's easy for me to say from my safe little non-GM chair, but you need to go out and get more guys that fit that mold more than the offensive firepower of a couple of seasons ago, because your head coach does not believe that is the way to ultimately win a title. And if you're going to continue to go against what he's saying needs to happen, why did you extend him in the first place?
The Chatty House brought to you by Matthews Mattress. Celebrate America's birthday at Matthews Mattress Independence Day sales event. You'll love the freedom you get from a good night's sleep. They have huge savings on Beauty Rest and Beauty Rest Black. In fact, you could save up to $1,200 on select Beauty Rest Black and adjustable base sets. That's my bag. Got 3 of them in the house, 2 of them with adjustable base sets. You need to cop those. They got free same-day delivery as well. They'll get your old mattress out of there. They got 10 locations to choose from. KC, one out by me in Roseville, one out by you in Elk Grove. You can head over to MatthewsMattress.com right now to find the location nearest you. Thoughts on JJ Redick before we let you go?
Good luck. Shout out to podcasters everywhere. I'm glad that podcasters have a chance to become NBA head coaches. So JJ taking one for the team there.
Okay.
I hope
this one. Thoughts on Monty Williams?
Oh my goodness.
I'll sign up for taking he's owed $65 million from Detroit and another $20 million still from Phoenix.
Hell,
$85 million to kick my feet up. I'll fire me twice.
He's still getting paid from Phoenix?
He's getting paid from Phoenix.
Yeah.
Sign me up. You can fire me twice. You can do it publicly. You could fire me in front of 10 billion people in the street.
And anybody that wants to hire me to fire me again, they can do that too.
The funny part, the funny part, and I feel bad for anyone, when you lose your job like that, like it's tough losing your job publicly. Monty didn't want that job.
No.
Monty took that job because of the money.
Monty's happy today.
Nothing, man.
Hey,
Monty is happy.
Man.
Don't cry for me, Argentina.
Thank you, Madonna.
Just a reminder, though. That with the dysfunction in Detroit, the Sacramento Kings still found a way to lose to that team at home. Good job, Kings.
Jaden Ivey turned into Allen Iverson at home.
I feel like there was any reason to bring that up.
Yeah, that was that.
The next time we
tough.
talk to you, I think the second round of the draft will be on.
Oh, yeah.
Are they doing like a 1 o'clock start or something?
Yeah, it's at 1 o'clock.
It's an
like
early.
we'll be doing like live reactions to the draft during the show.
Only on ABC 10.
I don't know. There you go.
They go on ABC on.
Are you
the
going on
round?
after?
We have post draft shows on day 1 and day 2. Come on now. ABC 10 always got the draft.
They hit us up for a game 7 that was never going to happen.
I guess no. As soon as I guess we'll see you when game 7 hits.
Okay, boys. Don't you want to shout out Channel 13, Kenny, real quick while I'm on?
Don't do that.
I'm an ABC 10 guy.
I think I think he wants shouted out NBC 10, which most of us couldn't.
Oh, you did. You did. First letter of the alphabet. He got it wrong.
Shout out ABC 10, baby. You know what it is.
As Soren says, Matt George, NBC 13. You know how we roll.
All I'm saying is I hope we're talking about the Kings trading 13 on draft night. That's what I'm hoping.
I think we'll be.
Either way, we'll be talking with Matt George about it. Make sure you're following the Locked On Kings podcast and checking them out on ABC 10. And we'll see you back here tomorrow on Sacramento Sports Leader, beginning at 10 a.m. with the Insiders, ESPN 1320.